Contracting is the world's worst business because it's got the lowest barrier to entry. Some of these guys are fantastic people. They're fantastic tradespeople. They're fantastic renters. They have zero business knowledge, and neither did I. I had to put a lot of money on training to get that, and it took me years to actually get good at it. If like for me, I want a large scale business that like my goal is to be the best contracting business in Canada, focused on real estate investors, right? If people out there that want to be contractors and you're in the real estate world, you have an unlimited source of work.
When he shows up carrying his tools in just a 2-4 case, that's a bad sign.
And then you wouldn't believe how many times we see that.
What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and in today's video we catch up with John from Blackjack Contracting, and he's going to be sharing with us the secrets and tips that a lot of contractors don't want you to know. And before we even get into this, just one thing I want to say about John is, like I've said before, he's a wealth of information, but I don't think you guys actually understand. He's going to recommend multiple contractor books in this video. I've actually never met a contractor that recommended a single contractor book or construction book or project management book, and he can just off the top of his head drop multiple books. That's a sign of the sort of person I want to work with. But anyways, let's jump into today's video.
What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and we're back with John from Blackjack Contracting. Really excited for today's video, where he's going to expose some contractor secrets and really hopefully level the playing field when it comes to us interacting with contractors, because I've seen it more than once where a very ambitious, well-intentioned investor ends up getting themselves into an unfortunate situation because they just rush headfirst into the wrong contractor and they don't do their due diligence. So first of all, John, appreciate you always coming on the channel. But secondly, let's just jump into it. You know, how can we protect ourselves as investors, or what sort of red flags should we be looking out for?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me again. It's always fun. So yeah, I decided to expose our secrets. So the first thing I'm going to talk to you about is how contractors price their jobs. Now, as I said before in my previous videos, I invest a lot into the education of contracting. So I've kind of learned it from multiple different angles, and that's why I'm going to expose it to you. So, I mean, the way a contractor should be pricing his jobs is he should be figuring out the cost of the project. So you're going to figure out your cost of goods sold, your labor, material, and subcontractors. When you get a set of drawings, you go through a walkthrough, you speak to your subcontractors, and you come up with a base price for the job. And then you should be applying your company markup. Now, the company markup is to what it is to cover the cost of running your company. Now, most people, you got to realize there's a difference between markup and margin, and that's where a lot of contractors go wrong. As the accountant's probably hearing it inside of you. And then after that's done, then you put on a profit. Now, there's lots of great books out there. The average contractor in Canada makes less than 2% net profit, and that's why most of them go out of business. 91% of contractors go out of business in the first 5 years. That's Canada and US wide, because the honest truth of the matter is, not that investors want to hear this, but that leads into my next subject, is that if a contractor doesn't make at least the amount of money it takes to run his business, he goes out of business. So when we do our pricing, this is how I price, and this is really doing a lot of teaching, is you take your cost, you add your company markup, and then you put on your desired profit margin. And I'm not afraid to say it, I price 10% net profit. Some companies will do more. If you get into windows, you get into door, something that's really production based with a high-end company, their market's going to be a lot higher than that. My company, I'll just say it this way, for small contractors that aren't PCL construction, that kind of stuff, the average is between 24 and 32% of the job cost goes to cover their company markup in order for them to stay in business. So their markup covers their insurances, their trucks, their office, the supplies, the employees, all that stuff. So the biggest problem that happens is that these guys go in and they just look at a job. Okay, they figure it's going to cost me this, and they say, I'm just going to put 20% on, thinking that they're going to make a profit. The problem is, a lot of them don't understand or even have a clue. I asked the guy the question, I have no idea what your company overhead expense is. So what happens is when you start getting a contractor that's jumping from job to job to job just so you can collect a deposit check to pay off the last bill, it's because he didn't charge enough money to run that project. That's why it drives me insane every time I'm on an investor forum and I hear people say, hey, looking for recommendations for a cheap contractor. That is the worst thing that you could say. Ask for recommendations for a reliable contractor.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't know what you guys would want, a cheap contractor that doesn't finish the job, or a reliable contractor is a little bit more money but finishes faster. I mean, I think in the real estate world, the one surprising thing that I've learned is that with investors, time is almost more important than
Yeah.
money. And so that's where the people go wrong when you hear all the time, oh, this guy screwed me, he didn't show up, this guy thing. Well, that's because you're looking for the bottom of the barrel guys that don't. It doesn't mean they're bad guys. We all start out that way. I did it when I was at the beginning. You jump from job to try to please everybody, and nothing ever gets done. In the end, you piss off everybody. So it's just, this is one of those things where it's like, yeah, I know we're all looking for the best price. We're investors. We want to make sure that our projects, but you got to think of the consequences of using the wrong guy. I've seen a situation in St. Catharines where a guy has been sitting with an empty basement suite for 2.5 years now and can't get this job passed because he hired the wrong people. And I see this all the time. And a good contractor, if there's a timeline delay, will at least communicate with you and explain why, right? Sometimes we make mistakes, or sometimes there is unforeseen things, but at least have a solution to solve it. And I could go on about this for hours and hours, but I'll let you talk now just in case you got a question.
Sure. Yeah. One thing I really want to build upon there, because I think it is important to understand, you made a really important point there, John. And that is, understand when we're only focusing on cost, like we're naturally going to get the bottom barrel people. And another way to put this in perspective is understand that when we look at other successful businesses, the businesses that, hire people at minimum wage, often those businesses are very process driven. So if we're thinking like minimum wage workers at McDonald's or at a grocery store or whatever, their job is very compartmentalized, and it's really dictated by a series of steps and procedures, and it's replicatable and really easy to do over and over again because it's a repetitive task. In addition, they've got very strong oversight or management in place to ensure that those low cost people are able to work within the system. The issue with new investors is often they've got no systems and processes, and they're looking for the cheapest piece of people possible. And this actually makes for like, it doubles down on the problem. What I'm really trying to emphasize here, guys, is that this is a double-edged sword that's going to cut you both times. So literally the fact that you're not prepared and you don't know what you're doing means that even if you there's versions where you can have that cheap person and it can sort of work, but it requires like insane levels of management. And when you're brand new to this, you don't have the systems, you don't have the experience, you don't have the process to do that. And John's 100% right on the time factor. If you don't understand that time's your most valuable resource, it's just because you haven't matured as an investor. At the end of the day, at some point, you're going to look in the mirror and realize you actually are the most valuable asset in your business. And as a byproduct of that, it has to be your time. That's the most valuable asset you have. So yeah, I just really appreciate you hitting home on that fact. So when we're actually looking at hiring a contractor, obviously we can look at getting referrals, we can ask for references. Are there any like red flags or certain things that you're going to do or you'd recommend people do in order to make sure that they're finding someone that's not just the cheapest option?
Sure. I mean, you can eliminate most bad contractors just go by on the public register search of the WSIB website. You don't need any special thing. You just go on there.
Yeah.
It's public knowledge. And if you type in that contractor's name or business, and it says not eligible for clearance certificates, which means he hasn't paid his bill or he's not on there. Now, there's an asterisk to that. Contractors that strictly work for homeowners don't actually require to put themselves on there. But as real estate investors, it's technically a commercial job when it comes to contractors. So if he's not on WSIB, he gets injured on your job site, that could go on to you. And usually if he's not on there, you can eliminate him pretty much right away. And you want to make sure that he has a minimum of $2 million liability. And if he can't produce that for you in 12 hours, as in go back to his office and send it to you, there's a good chance that he's not insured. And you wouldn't believe the amount of uninsured contractors we're constantly looking for subs. And that's the first two questions that we ask. And if they can't have it quick, we know there's a problem. We move on. Another thing that you can go on to is just having a little bit of an interview with them. And I mean, you want to see the biggest problem with contractors when it comes to actually getting the job done is the actual on-the-job management. So you could hire a great contractor, but he puts 2 employees on because he's too busy doing something else. And he's got nobody watching those guys. And they're, usually what they'll try to do is hire a couple laborers, right? And they could have a couple skills, but if they don't have someone managing to make sure they're doing things right, that's how projects snowball. That's how mistakes are made. And that's how timelines are screwed. Now, people make mistakes. It's if they can fix them fast, right? So if you're asking if they're going to be working on the sites themselves, I mean, that's a good thing, as that means they're small and that means they probably do a good job. But if they're going to have staff on and they have, no management or project managers or even foremen, it's something you want to be concerned about when it comes to a large scale project. Now, if you're just having a guy come in and, we're putting a vinyl floor in your kitchen. Okay. That's a different story. I'm more talking about the large projects. There's nothing wrong with those type of guys for a small task. If you have time to manage the job yourself, then that's where those guys come in place. The small guys, anything that they can bang out quick, get paid quick, because that's what they're after. Like for us, we run into problems with guys because what we try to run a real business here. So, there's a couple weeks delivery from the time they do the work, they get signed off by our PMs and they get paid. Well, that 2 weeks, if they can't, you'll hear a lot of pushback on that. If they can't afford 2 weeks without the payment, there's a good chance you probably don't want to work with them because there's problems, right? And you can fish that out. Is it going to be easy for you? No, but I mean, you want to set those guidelines right up front. Payment schedules are huge when it comes to contractors and making sure you're both sticking to them. Even on the contractor front, like you don't want to see a contractor billing you 70% when you're done 30% of the work, because that means there's a problem coming. Trust me. It's too expensive to run a contracting business, and cash flow is everything, right? So paying me, you can offer me 90% of, I don't want it because it's going to cause me problems later. I like to see things in a nice even distribution throughout the project, 6 or 7 draws, but that's where I go. You don't want to, if they say 50% front, 50% on finish, that's a problem because they're not going to have the money to finish that job. And so those are a few of the tips. Sorry, Matt, you go ahead. Then I got one more point to make.
Yeah. So one other thing that I just feel like we should bring up and explore a bit, because I feel like you touched upon it, but we didn't go deep into it, is understanding that a lot of contractors don't actually really understand their own business model. And so I think a lot of people think, oh, I can judge a person, and this guy's a good guy. He's a good person. He's a nice guy. So he's not going to scam me. I legitimately think that there's a decent number of like contractor scams that weren't scams. It was legitimately a well-intended individual that planned on doing all the hard work. He wanted to give you a good price. He wanted to get the job. He said the price too low and then finds himself backed into a corner and either doesn't have the resources to be able to bail the job out and just do it at a loss, or literally is on that hamster wheel that John was talking about where he needs the next paycheck. And he's got good intentions again, but he needs to go do the next job so that he can bail out the job that you hired him for. And so it's really important, again, just because you've maybe known someone all your life, or because they seem like a really nice person, or a really nice person said they were a really nice person, it doesn't inherently mean that they're going to be a good business person. And there's a distinguishing factor there to be made.
And that's the key point right there, is that contract, as I said in the very first video we did, contracting is the world's worst business because it's got the lowest barrier to entry. Some of these guys are fantastic people. They're fantastic tradespeople. They're fantastic renters. They have zero business knowledge, and neither did I. I had to put a lot of money on training to get that, and it took me years to actually get good at it. And I'm still not perfect, but I learn every day, right? But a lot of these guys aren't interested in learning. They want to get their paycheck and go on. So as you said before, most of these people, what you said, scams out there, I bet you 95% of them weren't scams. 95% of them had good intentions, but backed himself to a corner because they didn't price the job right. There's a great book out there, one of the more famous contracting books, and they say the general public investors are getting the greatest deal in history off contractors right now because most people don't have a clue how to price their jobs. And it's not about getting rich, trust me. I mean, it's just they don't take all the considerations of running a business into factor. I mean, we want to give you a good service. Well, that's going to take a truck and a trailer and tools and insurance and it goes on and on, employee costs. And a lot of people don't realize too, is like they hire an employee. They think, well, this guy costs me $18 an hour. He doesn't cost you $18 an hour. He probably costs you $30 an hour if you think of all the burden rates that go with it. You talked about, I bet you if you line up 10 contractors, 9 of them wouldn't know what a burden rate was.
Yeah.
when it comes to an employee, right? And that's what kills the contracting business. And again, back to you said, it's not intentional. They just don't.
Mhm. Yeah. And so again, we just really want to emphasize there. It doesn't make them a bad person, but it makes for a bad business relationship. And that's really important to be able to distinguish between the two factors when we're looking at hiring contractors. You kind of piqued my interest there, John, when you said like one of the more famous contracting books. Are there any books you'd recommend for real estate investors that either want to become contractors or just learn more or interested in learning more about contracting in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess your first thing is to know what you want. So if like for me, I want a large scale business that like my goal is to be the best contracting business in Canada, focused on real estate investors, right? But that has
Hmm.
to be your goal. Some guys want to do support their family, live a good life.
Yep.
That's your first goal before I start telling you some of these books. But there's a guy named Chris Stone. He's an author of the States. He's got two books. It's called Markup and Profit: A Contractor's Guide and Markup and Profit: The Ultimate Sales Guide. I have to get that. I'm sorry.
No, that's great.
There's a great book called The 7 Secrets to the Wealthy Contractor, and it's by his name is Brian Kaskavalcian. And that one's a mindset book. Just like you have to know what you want in order to run a successful business. And there's the E-Myth Contractors version by
Oh, is
Mike.
there? Okay, that'd
Yeah.
be good. Yeah.
So that, I mean, it just really goes into things. So there's a lot of great books and there's a lot of great audio on business. And obviously, because I am a contractor, that's what I'm interested in. So I spend more of my time reading that. But they do teach you kind of the same lessons. They just translate it for you.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, if people out there that want to be contractors and you're in the real estate world, you have an unlimited source of work. All you have to do is provide a good product and learn how to communicate and deal with real estate investors.
Hmm.
And it's literally an unlimited source of work. All real estate investors do are buy houses and fix them.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And so
it's
one thing I want to bring up for guys, or for the viewers at home, because I just think this is really novel and you may never experience it again unless you deal with John, but I would challenge any real estate investor. I would love for you just the next time you're talking to a contractor, ask them for a recommendation of a book on contracting, and the blank stare that I think you're going to get from 99% of contractors is immediately going to tell you whether you're dealing with someone that's focused on building a business and really like focused on customer service and just all the different aspects that go into actually operating a successful business, or whether you're dealing with someone that's more a hobbyist. And again, the hobbyist may be able to do your project, they may be able to do it well, but I think consistently, if you find yourself with a contractor that can rhyme off half a dozen books on contracting, that there's probably a good chance that guy knows what he's talking about. So I just think that's amazing, John. I've never had a contractor recommend a handful of books like that. So that's
Yeah,
awesome.
no, absolutely. It's got to be a passion. Like that's what my opinion on the whole subject is like if you're not passionate for the field you're in, I think you're in the wrong field. You're going to live a miserable life or at least some sort of version of hell.
Yeah.
To the point where I was fortunate enough to go into something that I love. And I mean, I didn't become a contractor. I became an electrician, as we all know, but you know, I fell in love with that and I found a new opportunity. And the best thing about working, you know, as a general contractor nowadays is that there's something new every day. Where electrical, I kind of done it all type thing. I still love it, but the contracting, there's an unlimited source of something new every day. You see something, you see new challenges every day. You meet new people every day, and that's a lot of fun being in the real estate investing world too, because it's a free education into real estate investing, just working with real estate investors. So it's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. Really appreciate all that perspective and context, John. So as we
No,
look to wrap up this video, any other pointers or piece of advice you want to leave the audience with when it comes to, you know, trying to vet that contractor, trying to avoid falling into an accidental scam? Because I agree with you, John. I think probably 95% or more are accidental scams where no one had bad intentions, but the result still ended up poor.
yeah, sure. I mean, a few obvious things. If you see, I mean, I guess it'd be superficial, but it kind of works. If you see a guy that pulls up in a minivan that's about to fall apart, not a great sign. That doesn't mean it's always, because the guy just
Hmm.
might be a personal frugal guy, but
Yeah.
it kind of gives you saying, I mean, you see the quality of a guy's tools too. If you see somebody with a bunch of mastercraft tools, probably something to be concerned about, right? Because most good contractors invest in good tools.
So you mean, John, when he shows up carrying his tools in just a 2-4 case, that's a bad sign?
And then you wouldn't believe how many times we see that. If you see, I had one, where was it? Oh, I mean, just the way they handle their estimates and quotes. If you see somebody writes a number on the back of a business card and doesn't have some sort of template for a thing, that's a bad sign. You know, like it happens with the older guys, but if you see a guy just send you a quote on an email and doesn't have some sort of software template, that's also a bad sign. You know, that means you're dealing with a hobbyist, a guy that doesn't treat the business very serious, too afraid to invest in this thing. And I think that's a big one too, is that if you see a guy that's not willing to invest in his own company and he wants the cheapest stuff, he's not serious about the long-term business. And one thing you got to consider is that when you pay me $100,000 to do a project, am I going to be here in 2 years to fix your project? If something goes wrong, am I be able to honor my warranty? Right? If he's out of business in 6 months because he doesn't make any money, or if he didn't make any money and you have an issue, is he going to come back and warranty when he already lost money? That's another thing, right? So it's there's a lot of ramifications to trying to do it the cheapest way possible. It doesn't mean you have to go ape shit. Don't have to go with the most expensive guy. Just buy right.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't help myself. I want to build upon one point there. So the one where if they aren't giving you a detailed quote, right? And I see a lot of investors get backed into this corner where the contractor will push back on them and be like, this is just the way I do it. I'm not going to break down my quote for you. And like, you know, again, like John said, some of the old school guys, it's their way or the highway. They've got a reputation and enough demand that like they're just confident in what they're doing and they're not looking to grow a real business. So sometimes you may have context, you know, is going to dictate everything. But there's far too many times that an investor reaches out to me and they're like, oh, he just told me that's the way it is. And it's like, I would really encourage you guys, always get a second opinion, right? Like always get a second or third quote. Ideally, you're going to get those 3 quotes so that you've got some benchmarks and comparisons. And then from there, don't just look at the dollar amounts, look at how that quote's presented to you, like John said, because that also, the devil's in the details here.
The details are the key important. Even if he doesn't break down number by line item, I don't always do that, but you want to look that every line item has details in it. So your plumbing is going to include this, you're going to get this, and you should see contract language too. I mean, anybody wants to reach out to me and see my contract, I will gladly share it with them and share all that stuff. But it's the devil's in the details, as you said there, because when you get that multiple quotes, you want to be able to compare scope of works, and where most of the problems go wrong in construction projects are scope of works.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. So again, if you guys want to reach out to John, we're going to throw a link to all his contact information in the video description down below. And again, reminder, John and his business has been expanding. So they've now got a full-time employee here in London, Ontario to manage your project. So again, love seeing Canadian businesses grow and expand, and even during these challenging times. So that's amazing, John. Appreciate you coming on the show.
Anytime.
Thanks again to John. If you guys want to get in contact with John, there's going to be a link in the video description down below to all his information as well. A reminder, he's got his own YouTube channel, so really want to encourage you guys to jump over, give him a sub. I always love being able to support my fellow Canadian content creators. There's not nearly enough of us, so it's awesome to see a local contractor really just crushing it in the game like John. And yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're new to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video.